Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. It's another video in my Crafty Crap series where I go through all of the different options I have for a particular type of craft supply, and today we're going to look at ink blending brushes and sponges, basically ink applicators. So if you have been wondering what applicator to use for what, or maybe even thinking about buying some, you don't know what to get, this is a video for you. Or if you're just nosy and you just want to see what I have in my drawers, then here you go. We got all kinds of crafty goodness here. So some of these things are a little on the pricey side, some of these are cheap, some of these are homemade. There's definitely a variety here, and you do not need to have them all. A lot of them do very similar things, give you very similar effects. So hopefully this will kind of help you decipher what you might need. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. Now what we're going to go through first is this drawer. This is a drawer. It's one of those 10 drawer units. You've probably seen them like in rainbow colors at your local craft store or online. I really like these for keeping all my stamping supplies in that I use frequently. Like I have one that's just blocks, one that's just you know, ink. I have two that are just ink pads. You know, I just try to keep my basic stuff here so I can grab it really quickly. And this is the one where I keep my ink blenders. And honestly, the ink blenders I use the most are a homemade version. And they are these guys right here. So what I did is I took a cosmetic sponge, the kind you can find at like the Dollar Tree. They come in like packs of 25, maybe 50. I don't know. They come in a pretty big pack, and you just kind of pull one off. And what I did was I folded it in half, and I took a bottle cap, just like a regular soda bottle cap, and I put some hot glue in there, and I just pushed the end in, and that's how I made these blenders. And I've been using these for probably about 10 years. I do have a video on how to make these. I think the title of the video is called DIY Shimmer Sprays and Daubers. If you want to check that out, but that's really all there is to it. There's no big mystery there. And I've only had to replace two. I had to replace the black because the black, and you can see how it looks kind of new here, it just disintegrated after many, many years of, you know, rubbing on paper. It just eventually broke down, but that was pretty good, I thought. And I did replace a yellow. I think I actually, you know what happened was I actually made myself an extra one. I just had a white bottle cap that I used for that one, but my yellow had gotten really contaminated, so I decided that was going to be an extra brown one, and I just made another one for yellow. So super, super easy. So what I'm going to do as we go through is I'm going to do a little demo of them just so you can see how they compare. I hope it's useful and not super boring and time consuming, but I just think that if you can see how a DIY one works compared to like a store-bought one, you may realize that for your needs, a DIY is fine. And I'm just going to use, let's do kind of a stencil with some medium-sized holes. We'll use that scale one. This stencil pack, by the way, is back in stock on Amazon. 30 stencils for 12 bucks, and they're all really good designs. I have a lot of stencils, and I didn't have a lot of duplicates with what I had, with what was offered here. So I'm so pleased that I saw that deal, because I mean each stencil cost about $6 at the craft store. So we'll start off with our DIY blending foam. Hopefully that's not the shadow. Let's see. That looks like, is that my regular blue? And I'm just gonna. Yes, there's blue. I'm going to use this blue ink pad. This is a Harmony. It's kind of like a Tim Holtz Distress ink, but this will work with any dye-based ink, or you can use it with any pigment-based ink, but I have pigment versions there, which I'll show you, because otherwise you need to clean it because if you used a pigment dauber and then you put it on a dye dauber, you'd end up getting that pigment ink in the dye pad, and that's really not what you would want to do. So I am just going to, you know, basically just rub my ink on there. Okay? Gives me a really nice look. If I want to do the edge of something, let me just throw a piece of scrap, throw my little scrap notepad note there, and I can show you that. Now the downside to this versus some other foam blenders is that it is kind of a weird shape. It's not like a perfect circle, so you might get some weird lines if you press too hard. You know what I mean? So you just want to go like off the edge and be real gentle, and you shouldn't get weird lines. It should be nice and soft like that. I probably use these most. This one actually is starting to break down. Can you kind of see how you're just starting to get a little bit of like, maybe if I bring that up, can you see how it's just starting to get a little bit of fuzzy there? If you see it's starting to leave debris on your paper, then it's time to rip that out and just put a new sponge in there. But what you really want to do is keep one for each ink pad color or each ink pad family. You don't need one for every blue ink pad. You could take one for all your greeny blues, like these turquoisey colors, one for all your more purpley blues, etc., etc. Because it gets better. The more ink that's saturated in here, the more it's going to work, and you're going to keep, it's going to keep just almost being like a self-inking stamp. It just works better the more it gets inked up. So don't clean them, just keep them like that. So I made these kind of in response to these guys here. These are the kind you can buy. These are the Tim Holtz ink applicators. They come in circles and squares. I do have some refills here, or some different colors, but as you can see, I didn't use them very much. That's why they stay in this old CD case. I really didn't like the square ones because I always got weird edges. The circle ones were better, but I didn't find them to be any better than my homemade ones. I bought them because I wanted to see how they compared to my homemade ones. I'm like, am I missing out? Am I like, you know, missing the boat on something that's totally awesome by just having a DIY version? And it turns out I really wasn't. I really liked my DIY one just as well, but you may prefer this. It's completely up to you. You know, it might be better ergonomically for you to have this handle. You may, like if you have arthritis, maybe this would be easier. So that's up to you. Use whatever is best for you. There's no right or wrong or better or worse. Now that does give me a beautiful look, doesn't it? It does seem to be a little bit more smoother than my DIY one, but honestly, if I didn't have them right side by side, I probably wouldn't even notice. So that's up to you. If it's worth the money to buy these, then go ahead. Now again, you want to keep like a foam for each color. You can tear that off and you can put another one on there. Some people will get a handle for every color family. It's totally up to you. A lot of people will just kind of put a little Velcro on the bottom of their ink pads and stick the applicator to their ink pad, so it's always with the pad they need. So it's up to you. Is that considerably better than that to go and buy it? Totally up to you. I am always reaching for my handmade ones, but hey, I think that actually looks better, so maybe I will grab this one more often. It's, you know, it's personal preference. I don't think there's a huge difference, but I think that, I think you could go either way. And again, what's your budget say? What's your pocketbook tell you? All right, so the next one that I use a lot are these guys here. These are called color dusters. They're by Judykins. And until the quote-unquote life-changing brushes came out, these were my go-to. I use these probably more than anything because I could get a much better blend. I would always get weird edges, even when I used the store-bought tools. And I just loved how I used this, and I got such a soft, delicate blush of color. I could also use it with stencils, although I didn't like them with stencils as much as the sponges because it took me a lot longer to get color down. But you can see it's very easy to do, and if I had a darker ink pad and I wanted a lighter color, using a brush like this was a much nicer option. Now this does give you a little bit of texture on your background. Like if I hold it up, I don't know if you can probably see that, it almost has like an airbrushed look to it. So you may like that, you may not. That's completely up to you. I really liked it, and I use these on almost every card until I was introduced to the makeup style brushes. And I know we're going to do that first, but since I've got the die pad out, I just want to keep going on this train of thought. And these, I got these at a scrapbook show, and I think I paid 20 bucks for a package of 10 of different variety of sizes. I wouldn't waste my time on these little guys anymore. They were just like a set of brushes I bought my daughter for makeup a couple of years ago. But I was curious. I didn't think they were that expensive, so I decided I would just get them to try them because the life-changing brushes are like really expensive. I don't have any of the picket fence life-changing ones. But then, shortly thereafter, I saw on Amazon they had these, you could get a pack of all one size, and I like that. But then they had these different ones with colored handles on Amazon. I really wish I waited and got those. They have another set that's got different colors, like pinks and brown and gray. But I already had all these, so I couldn't justify buying those. But that's what I would do. I'd buy the ones with the colored handles. Now there is a set by Tailored Expression. I think that's who makes it, that have a cute little stand and like 8 or 10 brushes with all different colored handles. And it's adorable, but it's like quite expensive. I think it might be like $50 versus like, I don't know, $15 for the 2 sets of those. I don't know. Up to you. But I like the colored handles because it's just really easy to see. But you can get away with 2 brushes, one for cool colors, one for warm colors. So here's, oh shoot. Ow. You do have to put more pressure, and it does take a little bit longer to get your color down, I found, to build up the amount of color that you might want. But look at that. Isn't that pretty? It's so nice and crisp and soft, and you know, that's impressive, but I think that's even more impressive. And then to clean this, what you would do is you would just take a scrap and you just wipe. or even a damp towel, and then you could use it with your next color. So if you just want to have two of these, one for warm colors, one for cool colors, that will work just fine. Maybe one for black and brown if you want to have one for black and brown. But I think this looks really nice. It does take a little bit longer usually to get the look or to get the amount of ink down, but as you can see there, if you have some ink built up in the brush, it works pretty well. Now, I like these with dye-based inks. You can use these with pigment-based inks as well. The only drawback is that the bristles will start to clump together, and you have to wash them, like actually wash them and then let them fully dry before you move on. Now, I'm going to grab a pigment pad, and I think I'll grab a different color just because, well, I'll grab something bold though, just so that we can tell like what's pigment, what's dye, we don't get confused. And I'm going to show you my versions for the pigment inks, and I think I'll use a different stencil though, so I don't have to clean that one. So I'm just going to use Distress Oxide, but any pigment ink would be fine to use. And I'm going to show you my homemade Distress Oxide ones. It's the same idea as the bottle cap, the makeup wedge in a bottle cap, except I just put it in some glass chess pieces because I had these. I used to play chess quite a bit, but I never really liked it playing on the glass chessboard because it was very hard to tell your pieces apart quickly and remember what piece was what because they all look so similar. So I just pulled off the felt bottoms and I use these for little daubers. So here we get, this is quite a juicy ink pad. So it's basically the same thing. It's just a little dauber. Of course you have a little handle though because unlike the bottle cap, because of the shape of the chess pieces, you can find those at any, probably any thrift store very, very cheaply. And I like them. And oops, that came out. So that's the only downside. Sometimes the hot glue does not stick that great to the glass. So I haven't had that happen in a long time, but I'll just glue that back in. So there you go. You see a downside right there. And then we can, but you see you can get a nice effect. Now we'll compare with the store-bought one. Now the interesting thing I noticed with these is they actually, once they dry on the foam, it's like dusty and chalky. The Tim Holtz ones anyways. So I knew I had a color. I had this color in one of those. I actually like my DIY one a little bit better. I feel like they don't get dried out and chalky as much as the store-bought one. But there you can see. So for this one, I actually think the makeup sponge works better with the Distress ink than the store-bought one, but that is up to you. I don't have the new scrapbook.com ones that I've seen advertised with a domed edge. I think that's probably better. That's probably like in between the homemade one and the store-bought like Tim Holtz or Hunky Dory one. But there you have it. Now another one I really like with stencils is these guys here, but I pretty much only like them with stencils. I don't like them with other things so much. These are kind of expensive. These are the Local King rubber stamp mushroom blenders because they look like little mushrooms. And these are actually used with dye ink. You can use them with pigment ink, but then you need to clean them. So I'm not interested in cleaning my tools that often. It's probably because I don't know. It's like I didn't clean this kind of Tim Holtzy type pad, and it got all chalky in there. But that hasn't happened with my my homemade one. So I don't know. It must be a difference with the type of sponge that it is. But anyway, for these, you do have to spritz them with water. So that's something that you might not realize, and you can actually find these sold for makeup on Amazon. I assume they're pretty much the same thing. I think these are about, I don't know, I think the whole set was maybe like 50 bucks with the stand. I think it was 10 colors with the stand. I think it was like 50 bucks, so it's not cheap. I think they're about $4 or $5 a piece if you just want to buy a color and try it. But I think if you buy the makeup kind, they're like $1 or $2, $1.67 or something. So you just pounce it on your ink pad, and then you grab your stencil. I think I have the dirty side up, and you just pounce it down. And I feel like I get a lot of ink at once when I do this, and I get a really bold design. So that's why I really like these for stenciling. But I find that they're really hard to control as far as like inking an edge rather. See how nice and bold that is? But if I try to ink an edge, let's just grab my little scrap here. I find that it's difficult to blend and to get a nice soft blend. You know, I keep getting those circles. It would be fun for doing a polka dot background and for doing clouds and things like that, but I just find it really difficult to get a sweep, and I almost feel like I'm going to be pulling that out of the little collar if I do that. So awesome for stenciling. Unfortunately, I don't find these that useful for much else. So if you know this one color that you always love to stencil with, it might be worth having one of these for that. And they come in these little containers. I'll show you. These are really neat for storage. You plop them right in there, and then it keeps, like if you want to take these on a crop or something, it's not going to get your bag all dirty and gross. Or you've got the little stand. If you do end up using them a lot, or you stencil a lot and you want them out, there you have it. I love the idea of it. I love that it's got a little stand. I love the owner of the company, Local King Rubber Stamps, but for these, I think they're kind of expensive for being a one-trick pony. That's just me though. You may find them super valuable, and I'm not gonna, you know, I'm not gonna yuck on anyone's yum here. The other thing I want to show you is the color dusters for pigment ink. So I had enough color dusters that I just put some separately. I used the little containers that my peg stamps came in to divide up my drawer here. So I have my my chess piece makeup blenders and my color dusters that I use for Distress Oxides in their little tray there, so I don't mistakenly grab the wrong thing. And let me grab that brick stencil again, and we'll just, I'll show you this with Distress ink, because I know some people, like, they only use Distress Oxide, or they only use just regular Distress ink or a dye-based ink, just to kind of give you an idea of what's gonna, how each thing's gonna look. And like I mentioned, I don't use the mushroom blenders with the pigment ink or Distress Oxides because I don't want to clean them because I'm lazy. So with the color, and I also don't use my fake life-changing brushes with those either because I don't want to clean them. But they do blend really well with that if you don't mind cleaning them every once in a while. I mind that. So you get a softer look, which might be what you're after compared to like the foams. So, you know, that's an option for you if you like that. So I'm going to set that aside because we've used up that paper. And let's look at some of the other blenders that we have in here. Those are pretty much my big all over doing a big background, big stenciling type of blenders. The other ones we're going to look at are a little bit more smaller and specific. So these guys here, there's a variety I have here, and I have a few in here. These little peg ones, they're by Doris. I know Ranger came out with some recently, more expensive, but pretty much the same exact thing. And these, what I really like these for is when I am stamping and I want to stamp with two different colors. Oh gosh, do I have a stamp handy? Let me see if I have a stamp handy that I can show you this technique with, because I showed it actually on a video where I was stamping a I was doing like a bunch of Dollar Tree cards. Well, this isn't like the best stamp for it, but it's what I have handy. So I'm going to use one of these layering stamps from Holtz New. And let's say I want to get a couple colors on this big layer. So we'll need a couple shades of ink, and we'll need a dauber. Let's say I want to go from a purple to a blue. So I'm going to grab, I'll just grab this blue one. I think that'll work. And I'm going to grab a couple stamping inks. So organized here. Alright, so I'm going to grab a purple. And I'm going to grab, oh, I like that purple. Let's do that purple. And I'm going to grab let's do purple to light purple, actually. I think that'll be even prettier. Okay, so say I want light purple in the middle and dark purple on the outside. So I'm gonna ink up my stamp with the light purple. Do I have this right side up? Oh my gosh, that'll be awful if I have this stamp on my block upside down. No, I think I have it right side up. Alright, so I am going to first start by inking this up with a lighter color. Then I'm going to take the darker color, and I'm going to go around the edges. But if I stamp it like this, I'm going to have weird, awkward lines that don't look very nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this purple dauber here, and I'm going to, and you could use any ink blender, but something small like this works really well. I'm going to pick up that purple ink, and I'm just going to pounce it where the two colors meet to soften that edge. You could also do this if you're doing like a rainbow effect, like maybe you want to go like a rainbow of colors across the sentiment. That would work really well. I'm just going to get my little stamping foam here. Goodness, I am like a disorganized mess. I don't see my stamping foam. So we're just going to stamp it and hope for the best. Alright, give us a... I don't have a squishy surface here. I'm just on my craft mat, so hopefully if I give it a good squish, it'll work, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But you see how, well, I didn't stamp perfectly because my table's not perfect, but you see how you get a nice gradient between dark and light? I really like to use, let's lift that up a little bit closer so you can see. So it's not perfect, but you can see how I have a nice gradient from dark to light there. I should have had something squishy underneath, but I wasn't intending on doing a stamping demo when I was starting this video. But just to give you an idea, that's what I like to use those for. You can also use these for applying ink just like you would on anything else. You can do spot coloring, which is a really quick way to color so you don't have to get out your markers. You can stamp and then just kind of go in and color. I could take this. Oops, I made a mistake. Let me go in there with a little bit of color. Another thing I like to use for ink blending and coloring are these clear markers. And what you can do is you can press it on an ink pad. Your stamp skipped. Oh no, what am I going to do? You just pick up that ink from the stamp pad and you can color it in. Now hopefully you wouldn't make such a mess on your image, but just you need to touch up an area. That works really well. And these little clear markers, Tombow and Stampin' Up! Make them. Probably other companies do too, but they're just a clear ink water-based marker. So that's really great. Another fun thing to do is to stamp like a detailed design and emboss it with black, and then use these little tools with your ink pads to color it in, because you have the black glossy lines that will keep everything nice and crisp. So you know, the different applicators for different tools. You could even use a Q-tip for that too, so you don't have to have, like I have Q-tips too. Q-tips right here. You don't have to have fancy tools. Q-tips are not going to last that long. You will eventually have to replace them, like not too, you know, you don't have too long before you have to replace a Q-tip. I don't use these in stencils because it will tear up that sponge. The sponge is not as dense and durable as the sponges that, like the makeup sponges and the blending sponges that we have. So I also have regular sponges. I honestly don't use these. They were kind of the first things around. These were another thing that were, you know, handy when they originally, you know, many years ago by Colorbox. Basically the same thing as these blending tools. I have them because I have them. I've had them. And I just didn't want to get rid of them because, you know, sentiment, I guess. This one's fun. This is called a Roll Tap. Again, this is a discontinued product. Actually, a lot of the ones in that drawer are, because they're from Colorbox and they went out of business, but they were discontinued before then. This is kind of fun because I think it looks like ribbons when you roll it around. You tap it on your ink pad and then you can just kind of roll it. You can make little banners and whatnot. It's kind of specific and silly. I can see why they discontinued it, but again, I've used these on cards. They're really cute. I had a little Can-Can Dancer card and I think a cat in a martini glass card where I use this, which was kind of fun. Again, I have more of the blending markers because this is kind of my class stash. These are some more blenders kind of like these. You can use them for chalks or ink pads, beauty blenders. They use the same way as your mushroom blenders, any of that stuff. You can pick these up at the dollar store. I think these were Jane Davenport ones, but same difference, really. And I sometimes use little stencil brushes, too, if I want to just kind of like rouge a background or something. I would just pick this up and, you know, blush in a little bit of color. This is really handy, again, if you do that technique where you stamp and emboss with black and then you just go in with the brushes and the ink pad and just add little bits of color. Works really well, and these stencil brushes last forever. And I have random little makeup brushes. Again, they work the same as these guys, so you don't have to go and find these from a craft supplier, although the Doris ones were really cheap. I don't know about the Ranger ones. You can definitely go in, you know, your dollar store and get some makeup brushes and, you know, get pretty much the same effect for cheap. And that pretty much does it. I mean, other than that, it's more of the same. These were actually ones you could heat up with a heat tool and you could stamp with. I'll show you those really quickly because they're very similar to a product that is being sold. I'll use this one because it's already on a thing. Very similar to a product that's being sold right now from Ranger. It's just a moldable plastic. You heat it up until you start to see the color change. Very, very, it only takes a couple seconds. I don't want to overheat it, so I'm not getting it too close. Then you press it down on something to get a texture. And then you ink it up on your ink pad and you stamp it. You can use bath blocks from the dollar store for the same thing. It's just kind of a neat little gimmick, and these came in different shapes, which I thought was fun, so I kept them, even though they're discontinued. Sentiment, I guess. That pretty much does it. I also have a homemade ink blending tool that I use for alcohol inks. What I do is I just cut felt, craft store felt, up into little 1" by 1" squares. You can get a huge amount from one sheet. I'll get them when they're on sale, like 5 for $1 or whatever. And then I took a baby block, just a little little alphabet block, and I glued Velcro to all this, to like the sides, the flat sides, and then I just stick it on there, and I use that instead of a store-bought Ranger tool. It works wonderfully, and I can actually have 4 different colors going and just kind of switch my sides around as I'm inking something up. So I really like that. It's very affordable to make your own tools, and it works well for me. So I hope you found this useful. I hope it wasn't boring. Gives you a good idea of what's available out there. There's other things available, like there's a Tim Holtz brush that has the same bristles as this, but I didn't get that because I have these. So pretty much anything out there that I don't have, it's because I have something that's similar, or I didn't think it will benefit me that much. I certainly have plenty of stuff to play with, and I hope you do too. And if you don't, you certainly can make some options very inexpensively so that you can make some beautiful backgrounds for your cards and scrapbook pages. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. I'll link down below everything I can, from videos that I mentioned to supplies that I use, so you can find some good, like the budget brushes. I'll try to find those budget brushes to link up. So that you can give these a try too if you want to. And let me know if you have any great blending tools that you like that I haven't mentioned here. I'd love to hear about them. Thanks for watching, and until next time, happy crafting.